Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to Srila Prabhupada, our Founder-Acarya. Deep in the heart of Avidya, acting in the mission, lesson 6 is Varnasrama challenge. At the close of the last lesson, we heard Srila Prabhupada say, near the end of his life, that his one lamentation was that he had not had time to establish Varnasrama, humanity's, quote, stepping stone for spiritual understanding, unquote, Bhagavad Gita 231-4. In this lesson, we will look at Srila Prabhupada's vision for Varnasrama. Still the great frontier for establishing Krishna consciousness throughout the world. So there we see in the title slide, Srila Prabhupada chanting japa at manner. Again, the summer of 1973. And that is the DVD Founder-Acarya photo. So we liked it so much, we can use it as Founder-Acarya photo. It looks very dignified. And okay. So in this lesson, we'll look at how Srila Prabhupada used the term Varnasrama in 4 different ways, as well as how Srila Prabhupada applied Varnasrama to ISKCON differently over 3 time periods. And I guess if you like more information about the 4 different ways, I suggest everyone look up, if you have the database under Back to Godhead, it's the July-August 2000 article by Hare Krishna Dasi. It's called What Do We Mean by Varnasrama? And it's based on her extensive research into Prabhupada's spoken and written word about Varnasrama. She was the one who identified 4 different ways that Prabhupada used the term, and I helped her kind of coin different phrases to sum up those ways. Okay. And then I became her editor for the book Speaking About Varnasrama, which you can also find on the database. It's called Speaking About Varnasrama. You go into the database, and then you click on content, and you go into a section called Compilations. And then you scroll down to Speaking About Varnasrama. It's a book that the archives published for us based on her research. And it traces, that book actually traces the evolution of Prabhupada's Varnasrama application for ISKCON just from his spoken word. From 1968 to 77, just through morning walks and little conversations. Fascinating unfolding of Prabhupada's Varnasrama vision. That I put up with one of Prabhupada's favorite verses from Vedic times. Prabhupada called them Days of Yore. So in a morning walk in Bombay on the 10th of April, 1974, Prabhupada, this is a case where Prabhupada made it very clear that classic Vedic culture is really a thing of the past. Quote, here it is. That is Vedic civilization, samskar, before the birth and immediately after the birth, then one after another. This is called jata karma, then nama karma, then when he is grown boy, upanayana samskar, diksha samskar, then when he is grown up, and marriage. Marriage is also another samskar. In this way, there are dasha vida samskar, 10 kinds of purifying practices. So unless one goes through all the samskars, he is not accepted as higher. Then where is Garbhadhan samskar going on today? Nobody takes care of Garbhadhan samskar to purify the womb. Still they are declaring that, quote, I am Brahmin. Therefore the conclusion is, Kalo Shudra Sambhavaha. Everyone is Shudra, low-born. So that was one of many excerpts where Prabhupada makes it very clear that samskara culture is long gone. Instead of samskaras, we Kali Yuga folks, we have some scars. We're scarred by the modes of passion and ignorance. So, although classic Vedic Varnashram has long since passed, since it comes from Krishna, its dormant realities, its dormant principles remain, simply awaiting activation. So this leads us to the next way Prabhupada used the term Varnashram. We call it dormant Varnashram, from the French word to sleep, dormir, dormant, sleeping or potential or latent Varnashram. There is Srila Prabhupada walking in Moscow in June 1971. He was there for all of 5 days. And Shamsundar Prabhu, with his Brownie star flash camera, got off 7 pretty good shots by Krishna's grace. And this is one of them. There he is in Red Square, and he specifically is in front of St. Basil's Cathedral. So Prabhupada, he got to speak with a Russian Indology professor, Professor Grigory Kotovsky. And their talks reigned over several subjects, but when Prabhupada referred back to this conversation later in his preaching, he would talk about 2 things. How even big professors, they tell me frankly, Swamiji, after this body, everything is finished. They haven't a clue, Prabhupada would say, about, or we say that, clue, that's our feeling, but Prabhupada would say they haven't any idea of the spirit soul. Everything is all just matter. And of course, that was the Soviet Marxist-Leninist scientific materialistic philosophy. So that's one thing Prabhupada would say. But he would also refer to their talk about Varnashram. And so now in this slide, you see the audio icon is there. We're going to hear Prabhupada talking to Kotovsky about how Varnashram, it's already there. It's just not recognized. It's just in the latent potential, or as I'm saying here, dormant state. It just has to be recognized. Because Soviet communism is preaching a classless society from the material point of view, which simply doesn't work. But Prabhupada is bringing up how you can have a classless society spiritually. But first of all, you have to recognize the material varieties.
In Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita, there is also the statement, Chatur Varnam Maya System. The sunshine is here in America, in Russia, in India, everywhere. Similarly, this Varnashram system is prevalent everywhere, in some form or other. Just like the Brahmins. The Brahmins means the most intelligent class of brain of the society. Then the Kshatriyas, the administrator class. Then the Vaishyas, the productive class. And the Shudras, the worker class. These 4 classes of men are everywhere present in different names. Because it is creation by the original creator. So it is prevalent everywhere, but not from none.
Okay, so by identifying different classes of people Krishna has created to form a complete society, Srila Prabhupada, he's indirectly indicating the folly, the foolishness of the communist attempts to make a classless society materially. There's the professor, he's sitting in his office, some other citizen is sitting in the Soviet Politburo in the Kremlin, somebody else is in the factory farm. Where's the classlessness? Everybody is naturally engaged in different occupations. Okay, so in the next slide, what we're going to see is that even Krishna's complete Varnashram system, if not used for his purpose, which is to gradually bring everyone back to Godhead, that even his system can become materialistic and corrupt. Oh, there he is, our Google Brahmana. Not looking too Brahminical there, is he? So, when Prabhupada would talk about materialistic Varnashram, he would very often talk about the corrupt caste system. And here's a quote, and this is from Prabhupada's correspondence with Dr. Patel. We talked about it in the previous lesson. Quote, the vitiated or corrupted caste system of present India is never sanctioned by the scriptures, but the caste system is made by God according to quality and worth of the subject, and it was never designed for the benefit of accidental birthright. Okay. That's one way Prabhupada would refer to Varnashram as materialistic Varnashram. Here's another way, and here's another quote. So we're going to get off the mic here. I'll let you hear Prabhupada describe this one, materialistic Varnashram. Hang on.
Out of many, many thousands and millions of people, one takes to the scientific institute of Varnasrama. That means followers of the Vedas, strictly. Out of these persons who are following the Vedic principles, mostly they are attached to karmakanda, ritualistic ceremonies.
Okay, karmakanda. That's generally what people do when they get into the Vedas. And that's why Krishna told Arjuna, famously in the second chapter of the Gita, after hearing Arjuna out, Arjuna was arguing from the Vedas, from Dharma Shastra, Varnashram level of preaching. We shouldn't kill our gurus, and the women are going to be unprotected, so many things. So Krishna told Arjuna, you got to rise above the Vedas. But most people, when they get into Vedic culture, they use it as a way to enjoy the material world. And Krishna knows that, so he at least gives them a way to do it without degrading himself. But that's still materialistic. It's still ultimately not serving his ultimate purpose. So again, Prabhupada was not interested in this sort of Varnashram. Now, we'll look at the kind of Varnashram Prabhupada was interested in. Okay. So, here we have images showing on the upper left a male cow, which most people don't even recognize these days because they're eaten either as veal at the age of 6 months slaughtered, or allowed to grow up all of 2 years and then slaughtered, the so-called steer beef. And then on the right you have a cow and a calf, and then in the bottom you have a shot of the Bhaktivedanta College of Radhadesh, the whole Radhadesh. There's the castle there. On my last visit to Radhadesh, I saw where they took this hill.
Can you move a little bit closer to the mic?
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll speak up too. I put this collage up here, Prabhu, because it nicely captures the two tracks, Prabhupada would say, that Krishna culture runs on. It runs on Brahminical culture and cow protection. Here's a typical quote showing that. This is from a lecture in Los Angeles, December 4th, 1968. Quote, so the example is set by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that human civilization will advance only on the basis of Brahminical culture and cow protection. As soon as there is fall down from Brahminical culture, and as soon as there is discrepancy in the protection of cows, there will be no more peace in the world. Therefore, Krishna specifically says, Go Brahmana Hitayacha. This Krishna consciousness movement is for the protection of Brahminical culture and cows. Now, notice when Prabhupada says that, notice how disconnected we are from the truth of what he's saying. I mean, living, immersed in this modern culture, although we accept what Prabhupada's saying on a theoretical level, on an ideal level, we're practically not living inside that kind of culture, Brahminical culture, cow protection. So when I do the seminar live, I just ask my students point blank, what is Brahminical culture? And they struggle to answer that question. Next question I ask, why is there no Brahminical culture without cow protection? These are all basic tenets of Prabhupada's preaching. Again, why is there no Brahminical culture without cow protection? Again, the students struggle to answer that. And then I ask, why protect cows and bulls long after they're, quote-unquote, productive? That's a modern kind of value. So I ask them, why protect cows and bulls long after they're productive? And again, they struggle because, again, we accept Krishna consciousness ideally, but then if we're not living inside that kind of a culture, smelling it, tasting it, touching it, hearing it, we struggle to answer these questions. And another one, why does human progress depend on Brahminical culture and cow protection? That's a real disconnect. We think progress means, the latest thing from Apple or GM. I mean, we may disavow that. We may, oh no, I know better. But that's practically what we're, the kind of culture we're living inside. So again, Prabhupada's saying, or I say, based on Prabhupada's teaching, why does human progress depend on Brahminical culture and cow protection? And then finally, in our modern materialistic age, how can we practically reconnect with Brahminical culture and cow protection to show ourselves and the world the value of Krishna culture, the culture that Krishna himself is showing? Krishna's a coward for it. That's what he likes to do. So those are challenging questions. And so now what we do is we explore some prominent features of Prabhupada's Varnasrama vision of how we can reconnect with Krishna culture in the age of Kali. So let's scroll here. All right, there's His Divine Grace sitting in a rather peaceful-looking, natural-looking setting, and he's going to be inspecting these features as we scroll them in. First feature is development of Varnashram colleges worldwide to retrain all Varnas and ashrams in their social and spiritual duties. Of course, in classic Vedic culture, there's no need for Varnashram colleges because the culture is simply passed down naturally. There are pure, thoroughbred, if you will, lines of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras happily work for those benevolent masters because everyone's cooperating to serve the Supreme Lord. But in Kali Yuga, the culture's gone, the samskars are gone. It's based, society today is, as they say, dog eat dog. It's not cooperation to serve the Supreme Lord. It's competition to be number one and cut down the other guy. So the whole thing starts with education. Therefore, we're going to see later in the lesson how Prabhupada is saying we must develop Varnashram colleges to retrain all Varnas and ashrams in their social and spiritual duties. Another feature of Prabhupada's Varnashram vision, it's a return to Lord Krishna's land and cow economy and culture. Let's see there. Okay. Yes. And then when Prabhupada would talk about that, sometimes you hear devotees say on the morning walks, but Prabhupada, they say that's backwards, to return to the land, to milk your own cow, work the ox. And Prabhupada would laugh and he'd say, yes, you have to teach them that backwards is forwards. Back home, back to Godhead. That's what we're aiming to do. Okay. Another feature, a mutual respect and deep appreciation among all classes of people based on their material interdependence and spiritual equality as God's servants. That's where we can find the equality, on the spiritual platform. We're all spirit souls, part and parcel of God. Materially, we're all different, and therefore we have different roles to play, just like as Prabhupada would point out, different parts of the body play different roles to cooperate to make the whole body healthy, happy. Prabhupada would say, for example, if I cut my toe, I don't disdain the toe. I don't say, oh, you're only a toe. I don't care for you because it happens to be on the lowest part of my body, on the foot. I don't say, you're a Shudra. You're just a toe. No, I need that toe. That toe in every part of the body is essential for the optimal functioning of the whole body. Therefore, if I do cut my toe, you can bet I'm going to marshal all my intelligence, all my resources, all my energy to get that toe fixed as soon as possible. So in Varnasrama society, there's a mutual respect and deep appreciation among all classes of people based on material interdependence. Everybody needs everybody. And spiritual equality as God's servants. And another feature of Prabhupada's Varnasrama is introduction and application of Daiva Varnasrama principles globally according to Prabhupada's famous time, country, and candidate. The key to connecting Prabhupada's Varnasrama vision to the modern world lies, in fact, in this last feature, his own example of introducing Krishna consciousness, Krishna culture, according to time, country, and candidate. And we'll explore that key more in Lesson 8. That lesson is called To Love is to Cooperate. It's so important because the way Krishna consciousness takes root and develops really is different in different parts of the world. And Prabhupada knew that, and he expertly adjusted according to what he called time, country, and candidate. Okay, so those are the 4 ways in which Prabhupada used the term. Next, we'll see how Prabhupada applied his Varnasrama vision to ISKCON differently over 3 time periods. And we'll also see how by the end of his stay on earth, Srila Prabhupada was convinced that by developing wholesome Varnasrama communities in God's country, the Hare Krishna movement could attract the entire world by showing humanity a better way to live. Not just tell by the word and by the book, but show it in 3 dimensions. So now we're going to shift the lesson from the 4 ways that Prabhupada used the term, and those ways again are Vedic, dormant, materialistic, and Daiva, or divine, or transcendental. Now we're going to see how he applied his vision of Varnasrama, or just the whole concept of Varnasrama, differently to ISKCON over 3 time periods. And this is why it's such a challenging subject. It's why it is such a challenge. And it's why we've been so slow to approach it, because most of us aren't tuned into how Prabhupada used the phrase in 4 different ways. And then, to make it more challenging, how he applied Varnashram differently to ISKCON over 3 time periods. Let's look at that. Okay, there's the slide. And okay, yeah. So what you're going to hear now, Prabhu, it's a really good example of how we have to study Srila Prabhupada, quote-unquote, whole, in a complete way. Not just isolate quotes here and there to push our own agendas. We really need to hear him whole to know how to properly apply his teachings. Because you're going to hear now a distinct evolution of his preaching. So we have to hear him whole and learn how he applies principles according to time, place, and people, so we can effectively represent him, present him all over again, to spread Krishna consciousness worldwide in the ever new circumstances that confront us.
Okay. Sure. We're getting some suggestions that if you could move a little bit closer to the mic.
Okay. Is that even better still?
Yes.
Okay. This is not how it went when we rehearsed, but that's life. Sure. I'm just going to hold it right by my mouth now. All right. So, here we go. Okay. Now, believe it or not, for most of the majority of the years that Prabhupada was with us, from 1963 when he started ISKCON to 1966 when he started ISKCON to 1973, the tune Prabhupada was singing was "Forget Varnashram." Chanting Hare Krishna is the panacea. And now we're going to hear a quote that's typical from that era. It's a 1968 quote. I'll take off the headphones and put the mic right by the speaker. 1 second.
Therefore, this is the panacea to engage everyone in Krishna consciousness, chanting Hare Krishna. This is the only remedy. Now you cannot again introduce the system of Varnasrama.
Okay, there it was, right from his lotus mouth. Forget it. Chant and dance, distribute books, have festivals, distribute prasadam, worship the deity. Forget Varnashram. Now, the reason Prabhupada was singing that tune was because, as Prabhupada himself would say, we need to put a head back on society. So Prabhupada's priority for actually the majority of the years he was with us, it took quite a few years, was to create brahmanas, to put a head back on society, starting with ISKCON. Because only when the head is healthy can the social body grow up healthy, inside ISKCON or anywhere for that matter. Now, in the next phase of Prabhupada's Varnashram application, Srila Prabhupada appears, and there's the key word, appears to reverse himself. So here's the slide, 1974 to 1976. We must establish Varnashram. Humanity is in chaos. So what you're going to hear with the same image on the next slide, but the same image, are two segments from two different morning walks, which I've spliced together because they complement one another. On both walks, Prabhupada's talking about the necessity of establishing Varnashram colleges. And it's a complete about-face from what His Divine Grace has been saying for many, many years. And this photograph was photographed on one of those walks, and that's why you see the faces of the devotees looking rather startled, looking rather perplexed. At the very least, they're looking, they're trying to come to grips with what Prabhupada is saying. So when I go to the next slide, you're going to hear two different quality sound, because on the first part, it's one quality, and then it's a different walk I think it's March 12th and March 14th, 1974, in Vrindavan. And Prabhupada is dropping the Varnashram bomb. He's really dropping a bomb on the devotees' heads. And the devotees don't know what to make of it. So here we go. Hang on.
The Varnasrama college has to be established immediately, everywhere. Wherever we have got our center, a Varnasrama college should be established to train 4 divisions. Because if the people are in chaos, how they will be able to accept the great philosophy? It requires school brain.
Those are famous lines. Because if the people are in chaos, how they'll be able to accept the cool brain. Now, instead of seeing Prabhupada's Varnashram reversal as a contradiction, we need to understand it as an extension of his compassion to connect us with suffering humanity and, by extension, suffering humanity to Krishna. Historically, the context is, and some of you may have been there, I don't mean on the morning walk, but in ISKCON at that time, the devotees have finally caught on to how to distribute books. The first wave of big book distribution is cresting, and there's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of pushback in the airports and in the shopping centers, and the anti-cult movement is starting. These so-called deprogrammers, playing on the fears of parents, are trying to snatch devotees away from the movement, especially in America, because we're not going away, and we look different, and we sound different, and the books seem strange to people. Then Prabhupada notices this. Because if the people are in chaos, he's saying, how they'll be able to accept the great philosophy? It requires cool brain. One of the states we have in America, the state of Missouri, it's called the Show Me State. I think it's still on their license plate. Because we can tell people things, but what really tells is when we show them how it works. So during this period, 1974, 76, Prabhupada is making it very clear that what we need to do now is we need to show the people a better way to live. And first of all, we have to understand that ourselves, so therefore we need to start Varnashram colleges. But that wasn't the end of it. Prabhupada wanted us, as you know, as you may have heard, to get land, every city temple to get land, to establish rural communities, so we can show people full-blown Krishna culture. Okay. Prabhupada is saying, since spiritual education is ISKCON's overriding purpose, the more we establish Varnashram colleges everywhere, wherever we have got our center, the more we will mature in pleasing our Founder-Acarya. We haven't done that, as we saw in the last lesson. We've barely approached it, and we're going to end the lesson discussing a little bit why. But it's really clear when you look at where Prabhupada is going with Varnashram, that he not only is saying here, well, what he said actually in the walks was, it's not that we need it, we're devotees, but they need it. They need to see an example of a better way to live. And that starts with educating ourselves and educating others of how to live in Varnashram, like that. Now that's phase 2. That's how Prabhupada tried to apply Varnashram to ISKCON in those middle years, 74 to 76, or you can say latter years, but just for a few years. Now in the next slide, there it is, and that image of Prabhupada's face should look familiar to you. That's the last image we saw on that beautiful video that UK devotee youth made about Prabhupada's preaching Leela. So, let's see. Okay. So 1977. It isn't until 1977, actually, that we come into the final phase, because it wasn't until 77 that Srila Prabhupada made it very clear that we need to do Varnashram now, not just for the world's sake, but for your sake. So let's take a look at some quotes from that. Let's scroll. Yeah, there's Prabhupada at New Vrindavan, I think 1976. And now I'm going to take off the headphones again. You got to listen closely. The quality isn't so good. In fact, the audio is not going to match the image. The image is 76 New Vrindavan. The audio is from February 14th, 1977. Prabhupada's in Mayapur. He's very ill. It's his last year. And some of you may remember he didn't even attend much of that festival, much of the Mayapur festival. So you'll see the words on the screen, but you'll hear his voice faintly. Hang on.
The Varnashram Dharma should be established to become a Vaishnava. It is not so easy to become Vaishnava. To become Vaishnava is so easy, right now any point now. It's not easy.
Yes, it's not easy. That's why we need this. So this is a famous room conversation, February 14, 1977, Prabhupada speaking with Harishari Prabhu and Satsrup Maharaj, and they are really trying to understand what Prabhupada intends here. And they're saying, you know, Prabhupada, you were speaking about Varnashram a few years ago, but nothing happened. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, you weren't ready, but now Prabhupada senses that his manifest Leela is winding up, and he's really concerned that the Hare Krishna movement will go on. And in Prabhupada's mind, Varnashram is a key to it going on in a attractive, sustainable way. And one of them says, but Prabhupada, I thought we just chant Hare Krishna, we don't need Varnashram. And to that Prabhupada replies, quote, chanting will go on, that is not stopped. But at the same time, the Varnashram Dharma must be established to make the way easy. And then I think it was Harishari Prabhu said, but Lord Chaitanya, he rejected Varnashram. He told Ramananda, you have to go further. So Prabhupada said, yes. Mahaprabhu, he said, Iho Baihya. This is external, Ramananda Roy. You have to go further. Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prabhupada said, he's not of this world. He's simply absorbed in the mood of Radha, love for Krishna. So Prabhupada said, so you're like Mahaprabhu? You're going to dismiss Varnashram? You're going to chant like Mahaprabhu? Why, you can't even chant 16 rounds properly. You can't follow the 4 regulative principles properly. People, my trusted leaders are leaving sometimes. So we need this. And let's see what else Prabhupada said here. Prabhupada said that now we have to pave the way. We have to make it easy, Prabhupada said. And just like it said in the beginning of the lesson, Prabhupada calls Varnashram man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. We use the word bridge these days. We need a way, and Prabhupada saw it, to get from this world to the spiritual world naturally, over the course of a whole lifetime. And that's called Daiva Varnashram Dharma. Now, as long as everyone is coming closer to Krishna, let me back up and say this, that although Lord Chaitanya dismissed Varnashram as external, Srila Prabhupada embraced it to further extend Mahaprabhu's mercy, so that everyone could get aboard the path home, back to Godhead. As long as everyone is coming closer to Krishna, extending mercy downward, in other words, extending it to people who aren't fit, it doesn't compromise the goal upward. And what's the goal? Pure devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that it doesn't compromise Krishna consciousness, as long as everyone is moving up. As long as there's ongoing education, training, people are getting purified. That's a very common complaint about Varnashram, that you just water down Krishna consciousness. That's not it at all. It's simply a bridge from this world to the next, but you have to keep everyone moving across the bridge. You don't camp out on the bridge. You don't loiter on the bridge, but you keep moving. So that's a whole art. Okay. So now, as the next two slides will show us, Varnashram is not only a must for us to become devotees, it is a must for us to bring the whole world back to Krishna. So we're going to see now excerpts from a letter that Prabhupada wrote to Harishari Prabhu, recorded in Tamal Krishna Maharaj's diary, and it's very clear what Prabhupada wants, where he's going with Varnashram. The image there is Gitanagari, Prabhupada's one and only visit to his farm in southeast Pennsylvania. And there is Harishari Prabhu right closest to us on our right, with a, looks like a tape recorder, and so many older devotees there. There's the farm president, Paramananda Prabhu, in his overalls. So here's the excerpt. Quote, "This is the next aspect of Krishna consciousness, which I wish to push forward. On these farms, we can demonstrate the full Varnashram system. If these farms become successful, then the whole world will be enveloped by Krishna consciousness. In the cities, we are interested for preaching, but we cannot present the ideal Varnashram system. This is only possible at the farms. So they are very important." Now here's a nice counterpoint to that quote. That was in a letter to Harishari Prabhu, but when Prabhupada spoke at Gitanagari that evening, you're looking at an image there, and that was July 15th, 1976. This letter excerpt is considerably later, 10th of August, 77. But that evening at Gitanagari, here's an excerpt from Prabhupada's talk that he gave, and it's very inclusive. Listen to this. Quote, "So this Krishna consciousness movement is trying to revive village organization, as you are trying here. Krishna, in his natural life, is a village boy in Vrindavan. Vrindavan is a village." And then Prabhupada turns. He says, "But it does not mean that we shall avoid city life or town life. No, everything, every place is Krishna's place. Everywhere there should be Krishna consciousness." So that's a kind of balance, lest we think that Prabhupada wants us all to run away to the country. Not at all. All these initiatives, city temples, Varnashram College, restaurants, Prabhupada especially like restaurants in college towns, restaurants and reading rooms, Varnashram, country ashram. These are all initiatives that are supposed to work like a constellation together. So now we're going to see, to close the lesson, we're going to have some reflections on Prabhupada's Varnashram challenge by a kind of, if you will, soldier in Prabhupada's Varnashram mission. I'm referring to His Holiness Bhakti Raghava Swami, who's really been focused on the Varnashram aspect of Prabhupada's mission for many years. If you know Maharaj, he's been developing Varnashram communities, mainly in the third world, where people aren't so spoiled and where people are more receptive to plain living and high thinking. Places like Indonesia and India and Africa, like that, and in Eastern Europe. So this is Maharaj's reflections on why we've been so slow to approach Prabhupada's Varnashram challenge. Okay, here we go. There's the first bullet point. Quote, "The Varnashram," and I put phase of Prabhupada's movement, "differs from the three previous phases." You might remember in Prabhupada's strategic plan before he came to the West, he referred to those phases as movements within his grand mission, movements or waves That was Prabhupada's phrase. But to make it, plain for us, I just call them phases. That resonates with us. So the Varnashram phase of Prabhupada's movement differs from the three previous phases. And what were those phases? You remember the phases? They were holy names and holy books, temples and deities, initiation and congregation. So the Varnashram phase differs in that it directly involves the Kshatriya and Vaishya elements of society. Whereas the first three were centered mainly on Brahminical concerns and activities. And then Maharaj says, which may explain why we have been having difficulty implementing it. Still, to this day, ISKCON is mainly engaging people in Brahminical activities, worshiping the deity, studying the books. They're vital. That's the Brahminical core of the Hare Krishna movement, the city temples. But it's meant to be a portal, if you will, to a whole culture, living the way Krishna lives, plain living and high thinking. I'm going to read you now a little excerpt from a Bhagavad Gita purport, which gives us a glimpse of who Prabhupada is really going for when he's preaching Krishna consciousness. He's really going for everybody. And it's an excerpt from the 12th chapter of the Gita, in which from verses 8 through 10, you may remember Krishna has a whole sequence of verses. If you can't do this, do this. If you can't do that, do that. First of all, in verse 8, Krishna starts with, just think of me. And basically, he's addressing people who are already at a high level of purity, where they can do that. Always think of him. And then in verse 9, you might remember, he says, if you can't always fix your mind upon me, then follow the rules and regulations, the regular principles of bhakti yoga. So there he's aiming at people who are ready to practice regulative sadhana, regulative devotees, sadhakas, like that. Now in verse 10, you may remember Krishna says, if you can't follow the rules and regulations of bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. Now in his purport to that verse, excuse me, Srila Prabhupada, he's really reaching out to all kinds of people, and specifically to Kshatriya types, Vaishya types, and Shudra types. Listen to this excerpt from the purport. Quote, there are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, and they require help. So, even if one cannot directly practice the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. So who is he reaching out to there? Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one rise to a higher state of love for God, whereupon one becomes perfect. See, our Founder-Acarya, he knows that to take Krishna consciousness to every town and village, it's going to require the cooperation of the three kind of devotees Krishna mentions right there in the Gita. Pure devotees, regulative devotees, and non-regulative devotees. And guess who is going to be most of those people? Most people are not going to be ready to take vows, follow regulative principles, chant a certain number of rounds. But if they're allowed to, if we allow them to, they can greatly help us expand the Krishna consciousness movement. So the three kinds of people, the populations that will more and more inhabit the Hare Krishna movement: pure devotees, practicing devotees, and non-regulative devotees. They know Krishna consciousness is right. They want to help. They're not strong enough themselves to take vows, but doggone it, they're gonna serve Krishna. Okay, so that's all a part of Prabhupada's Varnashram vision. Okay, let's look at the second bullet point, Maharaja's reflections, Bhakti Raghava Maharaja's, on why we've been so slow to accept Prabhupada's Varnashram challenge. Maharaj writes, quote, "One reason we have failed to take up Varnashram has been our fixation, or you could say exclusive focus, on city temples. In order to accommodate the Varnashram mission, we need to make a paradigm shift. In order to accomplish this, education, exposure, and training are a must. For this reason, Srila Prabhupada has urged us to establish Varnashram colleges." Remember that quote that Prabhupada said on the morning walk. Quote, "The Varnashram college has to be established immediately." This is 40 years ago this year. Everywhere we have got our center, a Varnashram college should be established to train for divisions. Because if the people are in chaos, how they will be able to accept the great philosophy? It requires a cool brain. Not only do we need to do this so to show people a better way to live so they'll accept Krishna consciousness, but we need to do it just so we'll believe what we're reading and what we're preaching, like protect the cow and work the bull and practice Brahminical culture. Yeah, we need it. Okay. And it's interesting, as I travel all over the world presenting this Founder-Acarya seminar, I notice that ISKCON is flourishing wherever its leaders are focusing on Prabhupada's overriding purpose. Remember those 7 purposes of ISKCON? Remember the overriding purpose? Education. That's where it's flourishing, wherever the leader really gets it. And devotees feel like they're going places. They're learning more and more. They're applying it more and more. Yeah, it's dynamic. It's exciting. Now we're going to go to the 3rd bullet point. And this is where we find our equality, our classlessness, not in Soviet communism, but in Bhagavat communism. Here we go. Maharaj says, "A classless society can only exist when all individuals identify themselves as servants of Krishna, while accepting roles within Varnashram, as in a drama or play." Shakespeare had it right. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women upon it are its players. So in Daiva Varnashram culture, everyone knows that they're spirits, but everyone also knows that because of their different karma, they have been given different roles to play. So everyone cooperates to play the part, to play the hand they've been dealt, to play the part, and everybody needs everybody. But the equality comes, the self-esteem comes, the identity, and the mutual respect when we identify all as Krishna's servants. We don't get so caught up in the play that we forget who we are. We're spirit souls, we're servants of Krishna. Okay. And that's why this Varnashram that Prabhupada is interested in, and interested in us adopting, and the whole world eventually transforming, it's divine, it's transcendental, it's back to Godhead. Okay, so in this lesson, Prabhus, I have a note. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to identify the 4 ways in which Prabhupada used the term Varnashram. So you may remember, again, it's Vedic, dormant, materialistic, and Daiva, or divine. Students will be able to describe how Prabhupada applied Varnashram to ISKCON differently over time. For many years it was forget it, just distribute books, chant and dance, have festivals, distribute prasadam, worship the deity. And then the middle part was, let's show a better example so people can be inspired to read the books and practice Krishna consciousness. It's Varnashram for them. And then finally, the 3rd phase, right at the end, 77, was you need it. You need it just to make it. I remember Harishari in this conversation saying to Prabhupada, but Prabhupada, after 6 months, a year, people come into ISKCON and then they just get initiated. And then 6 months, another year, then they're given Brahmin initiation. So Prabhupada's immediate response to that was, why make a farce? Amazing. Why make a farce? If he's not fit for Brahminical work, there's no need. Let him remain Shudra. Now, Prabhupada doesn't mean by that, material Shudra. He means let him remain a Vaishnava, but working in Shudra Varna. Just like our graduate back to Godhead, summa cum laude Jayananda Prabhu. Where would you find Jayananda? You'd find him under a car or fixing a pipe, Most of the time he was doing labor. He was acting in Shudra Varna. He was no dummy. He had a BA in mechanical engineering from Ohio State. He could give a good Bhagavatam class. And he was through and through a Vaishnava. So humble, so hardworking, so surrendered. But Prabhupada's making the point, people need to be engaged appropriately. There's no need to socially promote them or expediently promote them to Brahminical initiation just because, you need a cook and a pujari. So you give them Brahmin initiation, and then they go away when they can't handle it because they're not really fit to act in that Varna. Now, that said, I must make a distinction here. There's two kinds of, when Prabhupada uses the word Brahminical, there's two ways he uses it too. He uses it in terms of Varna, like the 6 businesses of a Brahmin. You might remember, Patan Patan, Yajan Yajan, Dana Pratigraha. A Brahminical person, this is how he sustains himself. He studies the scriptures, he teaches the scriptures, and he puts on the dakshin. Yajan Yajan, he worships the deity, he engages others in worshiping the deity. Dana Pratigraha, he gives in charity, he receives charity. That's how a Brahminical person sustains himself. Now we have to distinguish that use of word Brahminical from another way Prabhupada would use the word Brahminical was Vaishnav. Vaishnav. That's why Prabhupada would say, if somebody takes Diksha from a pure devotee, Prabhupada said, Diksha Vidham, the process of initiation, he's more than Brahmin. Because he's practicing Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a pure devotee, all the Vaishnava qualities begin to manifest if he's actually following, strictly following. So that's true for any Vaishnava in any Varna. Yeah. So those two things have to be distinguished. Okay, and then finally, a lesson outcome, students will be able to identify the components of Srila Prabhupada's Varnashram challenge, as well as what we must do to meet it. So we looked at some prominent features of the kind of Varnashram Prabhupada's interested in. And then before I go to the Q&A, I'm just going to show you the preview of the next slide, and the transition reads, having beheld the revolutionary scope of our Founder-Acharya's mission, and the next lesson will focus on finding our individual mission within his greater mission to re-spiritualize humanity. Okay. So, I'm back here. It's 19 after the hour, a little late, but maybe we can go to half past. Ramananda Prabhu?
Okay, 10 minutes. I have a question, but I'll wait for others.
Haribol, I have one question and actually 2 questions. Can I start?
I'll try one, Mataji, because there's others too.
Okay, thank you for your nice presentation. First question, is how would you, in your own words, describe the distinction between the latent and materialistic Varnashram, or the Vedic and materialistic? There seems to be some confusion on, I know you said the latent means which is already there, so how would you describe that and the Vedic Varnashram? Please.
Okay, so I'll just go with your last focus there. So it's already there means it's there, but it's not recognized, and it's not organized around devotional service to the Supreme Lord. In Vedic times, it was recognized, it was organized, it was what was happening, it was the whole culture. So because we're so out of touch with that, therefore we need some remedial help. Therefore the first thing Prabhupada said we must do to start turning human society back to Godhead is we have to establish educational institutions. He said Varnashram colleges. In the center, in the temples, you get some basic training, maybe even do Bhakti Shastri. But then when people get a feel with the guidance of devotees who they are in relationship to mission, then they can start focusing on their contribution in Varnashram college. In Vedic times, it's just passed down from generation to generation because everybody is following the samskars for their varna and their ashram. It's just part of the culture, but we need remedial help. Okay.
So would the materialistic, the same point, would the materialistic varnashram be considered as the caste system?
Yeah, as I presented, Prabhupada would talk about materialistic varnashram in two ways. He would either talk about, the corrupt caste system where people are claiming privilege by birth, or he would talk about how people just use, the remnant of Vedic culture to get material benefits, like people who worship demigods, karma kanda. So two ways he would talk about it: karma kanda, as in that quote I played, or just in that letter excerpt I read where he's talking about the vitiated, means corrupted, the vitiated caste system. Varnashram is never meant for exploitation. It's meant for cooperation. Okay. Ramanandaji, you had a question?
No, I'll defer to Mother Gandhari.
All right, if no one else, Mother Gandhari, then go for it.
I am observing the present-day confusion in distinguishing Varna is, there is the difference between the congregation devotees who live outside. Of course, they come to do services. They are initiated and they live outside. And the temple devotees who are actually engaged in varieties of service, like they are Brahmin in the morning, afternoon they have to do gardening in the small temple community, then they have to go and do the book accounting. So I personally think, I'm noticing that people from outside or congregation members or devotees who are not aware of so much about the Varna ashram, there's definitely the confusion that they are acting, their temple devotees are doing activities of 4 Varnas. I can't come to that level. So what's your comment on that?
Well, there's a lot. Yeah, sure. There's a lot going on there in your question. And don't forget that, as Prabhupada writes in his purport to, I think it's either 335, that as we advance in Daiva Varnashram, we let go. In other words, in the beginning, when we're on the earth side, if you will, of the Varnashram bridge, we're very attached to what we're doing, and we're attached to the fruits of what we're doing. We're practicing Krishna consciousness, but perhaps on the level of sakam karma yoga. We're full of material desires, and that's okay. Shukadeva Goswami says it's fine. Whatever the state of your desire is, just practice devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. Now, as we advance in Varnashram, we begin to, and the way we advance is not just by working, but by ardent hearing. That Shravanam process, that is what waters the creeper. And as we continue to hear about Krishna, we move gradually from sakam, full of desire, full of selfish personal desires, personal motivations, to nishkam. Now, nishkam means dutiful, detached work. We're still attached to what we're doing. We're still attached to our particular contribution, to our varna, if you will, and our swadharma and our swabhav and all that stuff, swakarma, swadharma, swabhav. But we're letting go of the fruits more and more. We're really seeing that everything really belongs to Krishna, and I belong to Krishna. So we go from sakam to Nishkam, and then by the time we reach the other side of the Varnashram bridge, as Prabhupada writes, we can do anything for Krishna. Any Varna, any ashram, just like the example Prabhupada showed when he came over, he was doing everything himself, especially for his first listeners. We had no clue about spiritual culture, making Swamiji stand in line to go to the bathroom or the sink. Or anyway, in the ultimate stage of Krishna consciousness, one is not attached to what he's doing or the fruits of what he's doing, and we just are in love with Krishna. That's called Shuddha Bhakti, practicing devotional service, Shuddha, totally pure. So Prabhupada wanted us to adopt Daiva Varnashram Dharma for a couple of reasons. One, he wanted us to be able to show the world a better way to live, really organized, really pure, simple, healthy, happy, like that. And he also wanted us to make it, because we don't come to Krishna because we're pure. We don't come into this world because we're angels. We come to him, as he certifies in the 7th chapter, for different material motivations. But as we practice devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee, we're able to outgrow those very reasons we came to him. Like Dhruva Maharaj, Prabhupada would mention the classic case. His material desires you can't even imagine. He wanted a kingdom greater than his father, grandfather, or great-grandfather. So he was awarded the pole star, and he was embarrassed to take it. At the end, he said, "Oh, my Lord, these desires are just like broken pieces of glass now that I've found in you a rare gem." So it's a way, Varnashram is a way to connect us to the world so everybody can get aboard. They can see a practical, a better way to live. And it's a way to connect the world and us to Krishna. It's a bridge for everybody to go back to God. And this is why Srila Prabhupada, as Lord Chaitanya, Senapati Bhakta, as his military field commander, is extending Mahaprabhu's mercy further down, down, down. Mahaprabhu is not even interested in Varnashram because he's Krishna in the mood of Radha. But Prabhupada, in that room conversation, he's telling Harishari and Sadhguru Maharaj, our program is different. And you think, what? How can his program be different than Lord Chaitanya's? What Prabhupada means is that he wants to extend the road further down. He said now we have to pave the way, make it easy. And he's meaning for us. We're the first takers of Krishna consciousness. So at any given ISKCON center, you gave an example, you gave an example of people living in the temple. Now, these temples, originally, they were just, taking everyone into Krishna consciousness. And because that's the way it starts. Everybody, Prabhupada was taking all comers, as we know famously from Prabhupada Lilamrita. But more and more, Prabhupada, as he stayed with us, he was talking about boiling the milk. So now that the movement is no longer a temple-based movement, it's a congregation-based movement, what these centers should be great examples of the Brahminical core of the Hare Krishna movement, where people are worshiping the deity, the temple's clean, the offerings are on time, the devotees are purely motivated. Of course, as I'm saying these things, we know we're far from that very often, but that's really what these centers, these temples, are really for renunciates now. And everybody is to come and support the temple and worship the deity. But the temple is only the first. It is not only the first, but it is as I called it. It's a portal. It's an entry into a whole Krishna culture. It shouldn't just be like a facade on a Hollywood set, where you go through the door and then there's nothing on the other side. Prabhupada, he wanted the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in its full-blown, consummate, mature stage, and I'm talking, probably generations away. he wanted us to be independent of modern materialistic civilization. Of course, if you have city temples as the basis to reach the people, then you're in the city. But that was only one. That was just the first initiative. And then he wanted the Varnashram college, and then he wanted the country ashram, where we control the full-blown Krishna culture as it is. And then he wanted in the colleges, restaurants and reading rooms. As I said, this is a whole constellation of initiatives that are to work together to give people a complete picture of Krishna culture. So if you find things confusing, it's because we're still in ashram ISKCON. At least I can say that after all these years, at least it's politically correct, at least in many places, to be pro-Varnashram. There isn't as much controversy about at least the theory as there used to be. How to implement it is another thing. More, leaders are waking up as the head is getting a little clearer that we need to go in this direction. Go door and the yoga door, and they kind of go together. We should be leaders in this. Instead, we're behind the curve. We should be showing, how to have food and pure life and pure air and pure relationships and functional communities. We hardly have that. We're still in pre-Varnashram ISKCON. So if it's confusing, it's because we're still not there yet, And why? It's because the head on the soul body, the medical community within ISKCON, is itself still getting clear. That's why we have, at the GBC level, we have the strategic planning stuff going on. Whether people agree with it or not, at least it's better than what we had, which is practically chaos. At least there's some organization going on now. I don't see it as the ultimate end game for the movement. It's rather corporate in flavor. Ultimately, it's Daiva Varnashram. It's the kind of culture that we're going to have to move more toward. But at least it's better than it was. So the head on the body, starting with ISKCON, on the ISKCON social body, is itself just getting clear about Prabhupada's position. That's why the GBC just published finally the document coming out of our committee, Ravindra Prabhu's Founder-Acarya dissertation. I mean, look where we're at. We're still getting clear on who our foundation is here. You're looking at it right there. Our foundation.
Thank you very much. This your detailed explanation is
and all our
very
shiksha and
It's getting broken up again, Suresvara.
Okay, you got me going there, Mataji. Anybody else to close out? How do I sound now, Ramananda?
No, I'm saying it's so wonderful. The detailed explanation is very helpful for people who are going to get the references. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Prabhupada. Any more? How do I sound, Ramananda? Am I still coming in here?
Now you're okay.
Sureshji, your presentation of Varnashram is always so refreshing because I always get confused. What does it mean? And you really open it up that it means so many things. And Prabhupada said so many things at different times. And perhaps the application of what Prabhupada would want may be very different in different parts of the world. You gave the example that Bhakti Raghava Swami in more third world countries, in Indonesia, etc., how well the farm communities would work because their culture is more in line with that. But here in America, it may be different, and according to time and circumstance. So it really, I'm a whole lot less confused when I come out of hearing this. That a lot was Prabhupada said a lot, and we just have to use our intelligence how to apply that and not have have a narrow, myopic view of what he meant, because he meant many things, and some devotees may embrace certain aspects certain aspects of Prabhupada's vision and apply, and someone else may embrace something quite different but also valid. And that's helpful, because I tend to want to look at things and this is what it means. But as you said, it means and can apply in many ways, and I like that global vision that we come out of this particular seminar with.
Well, we're really going to take a look, not in the next lesson, but in Lesson 8, at what I call now the Holy Grail of Krishna consciousness, which really is finding our unity amid our diversity. And that's really what we're talking about here. That's the whole key to Prabhupada's mission advancing, is to be able to find our unity amongst basic universal principles. And once we do that, as you'll see in that Lesson 8, then and only then can we celebrate our diverse applications of those principles. It's not one size fits all. It really is different. And Prabhupada knew that, and that's one reason why he was so successful circling the globe 14 times in 12 years. He knew how to introduce and develop Krishna consciousness differently in different times, different countries, different peoples. Okay, so what do you think, Ramananda? Should we wrap it up?
Yes, it's too late to continue. We should stop. After we're done, I'll try and get you on Skype. We talk for a minute or two. Okay, good. I'm wondering if we're going to have to re-record this or not because of the band challenge we had today. Okay, thank you very much, Prabhu. It's been really fun sharing Prabhupada's Varnasrama challenge with you. And the next lesson's a kind of balancing lesson, because we'll focus more now on our individual mission within his mission. And you're already doing it. We just have to do it better. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Haribol.
Prabhuji.
Jai jai.
Haribol.